Welcome to this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. Today with us, we have Scott Jr. Ereckson. Junior, glad you could join us.
Thanks for having me, Max. Happy New Year's, guys.
Hey, Happy New Year to you. It's good to have 2020 over with. Let's just be honest. I mean, what a crazy year that was. So glad that's all behind us, and now we can look forward to 2021. Junior, you've got an interesting backstory as far as what has happened throughout your life, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about. Walk us through your backstory for those folks out there that don't know who you are and everything. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Scott Jr. Ereckson. I'm a four-time international president for the Mongols Motorcycle Club. I'm retired. I was active 32 years. Wrote a couple of books, and now I just live a peaceful life.
Yeah, I'm sure much more peaceful than back then. So kind of going into your backstory, how old were you when you first got a motorcycle?
I was 19 years old when I got my first bike.
What kind of bike was it?
That was a 1978 and a half Super Glide.
Harley Davidson, for those that don't know that.
Sir.
Was that your first motorcycle? Did you do any like dirt biking, anything like that?
No, I had a Nova mini bike. It was my first bike when I was like 7, and then when I was 14, I had a dirt bike. Got into dirt bike riding, and just had a thing for motorcycles.
Yeah. So would you say the dirt bike thing kind of helped you get into getting on the road bike and the Harley world, or did you just?
Well, I don't know if it got me started on the Harley world, but it taught me how to ride a motorcycle, which was the first part of the story, you know?
Right.
Taught me how to shift gears and pull a clutch, so.
Yeah, exactly. That's half the battle, right?
That's right.
So you get this Harley and you're 19 years old. I'm guessing you saved up money for it. You bought it used, or correct?
You know, actually, that's a funny story because my dad had actually went in house with me. My dad said, if you can get half the money, he goes, I'll pay the other half of the money. Okay. So my father actually forked up half the bread, and I had saved half the bread myself.
All right, and so you buy the bike, you're riding around, and something happened to you that made you say, hey, there's a little more to this than just riding a motorcycle around and you know, shining the bike up, and I got to do more. What was that moment where you said, you know, there's more to life than just riding this up and down the road or back and forth to work?
Well, let me tell you my first experience where I think I really got punched in the jaw with this biker thing was I was probably about maybe 6 years old, and at the time we were living in San Diego. Well, no, actually, when I was 6, we were still in Orange County at the time. And I was with my mother in the car. We were at an intersection, and a Hell's Angel pulled up next to us. And I was looking at this guy with the Hell's Angel, and I was looking out the window. Like I said, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I had my face pinned against the window staring at this guy. And I remember my mom reaching over and slapping me, telling me not to stare. And I think that was the first time I said, wow, look at this, man. It was the closest thing to a real cowboy in the out west. I mean, this guy had leathers on and was dirty. Looked like he'd been on the range for 6 months. And I mean, this was the real thing. I was just amazed at that young age.
So you see this, you're 6 years old, and then you go on and now you're around 19 years old.
Now I'm 19, and
you talk your dad into going in halfers on a bike, and now you got the bike, and of course, you know, at 19, I'm guessing you're out of high school by now, right? And
right.
Working some crummy job that you normally do.
Working some crummy ass job. Yeah, I was working I had a job at a little place as a mechanic assembler, putting together parts for screwdrivers for about, I don't know, $8-9 an hour, and I saved my money, and that's how we did it.
Now you're riding around, and how do you get into the motorcycle club world? You know, obviously one of the requirements is you got to have a motorcycle. So you already checked that one off the list. But now you're riding a bike around and you get into that world. Walk us through that.
The area that I grew up in San Diego was upper class, high upper class. My parents were well off. I was raised in a well off family, but you know, there was something that that drew me across the tracks. I don't know what it was. I kept going to hanging out with people that weren't as well off as I was. And I decided that I wanted to be an outlaw biker. So we kept going down to the beach, down to Pacific Beach. We run into some Hells Angels down there. So I had kind of made up my mind because I reverted back to my 6-year-old experience, and I kind of made up my mind I wanted to be a Hells Angel. So at 19, I was pretty determined I was going to be a Hells Angel. So we kept going down to the beach where they hung out, and it was a bar called Maynard's in Pacific Beach in San Diego County at the time. So we ran into some people down there, and we were hanging around with these guys. You know, we were flying some red rags out of our pockets, and I think I was on my way to doing that, and ran and had a bad experience out in front of this bar with some of these guys. It wasn't the way I wanted to go. It was a bad experience with that crew of people, and I thought, well, yeah, I'm looking for a brotherhood, and the experience I had, I felt there was no brotherhood. I felt that any time I was going to get beat up or had some kind of an issue with these guys, so I decided to do something else, and we hung out by ourselves and rode around for a little while.
So you were going up to the beach and everything with a handful of buddies of yours, and y'all are all on bikes and everything. You decide the Hells Angels way it isn't the way for you to go, and then obviously the Mongols was the way that you decided to go. What got you first introduced with the club?
Okay, so let me explain. So the Mongols, growing up where I lived, in the area I lived, it kind of mattered where you grew up, what area you lived in is kind of how you went into the bike club. I mean, the area that I lived was pretty much Mongol. If I would have gone maybe 3, 4, 5 miles east, I would have been hanging out with more of a Hells Angel group of people. To the west would have been some more Hells Angels. To the south, maybe some more Mongols. It was more of I think, a neighborhood type of thing. And the reason I wanted to be a Hells Angel more than Mongols is because at the time they were more renowned. The Mongols was just coming up. It was more of a neighborhood. It was more of a small neighborhood bike club. I don't think anybody really took us very seriously. You're talking 79, 80. I don't think anybody thought we were a force to be reckoned with. I mean, when I got in the club in 1980, we'd go to bars and we had to fight our way out with cowboys. I mean, the cowboys were standing up to us. We had to fight our way out of bars, and we were just, a small crew. So, I had some guys out of the neighborhood, some older guys that were a few years older than I, that went Mongol. And once I had a bike and was doing my own thing, word got out. I was in the neighborhood. Word got out that I was a fighter. I loved to fight, and I could kick a lot of ass. So next thing you know, I got these guys from the neighborhood trying to look me up, and went to a New Year's party. I think it was it had to have been New Year's 1980.
You also have to think that, like, now, I mean, people can almost literally make any contact on the internet, Facebook groups, they can get in touch. But back then, I mean, the whole word of mouth thing and having to wait till like word gets back to you about what you can do and where you can do, what you can do. I mean, now it's almost ridiculous. I mean, you can literally sign up, I think, on one of the previous podcasts we did, that it's something like about 36% of biker gang members in the United States don't own a motorbike. They're almost like associate members who support the group but don't have a bike.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's how it's definitely descended into something way different than I started out as.
I mean, I'm sure way back then, we're talking about 1980, you probably never thought that motorcycle clubs would have websites. Hell, I mean, back then there wasn't even a website. There was no internet yet.
No, yeah, and you got to remember, when I got in the club in 1980, there wasn't a helmet law in California. So without helmets, speed limit was 55 miles an hour. And I remember my Super Glide I think it was a 4-speed at 65. That thing was winding. So, 55, 65, I mean, it's just the way it was. And like you said, there were no cell phones, no cameras, no nothing. It was a rotary dial phone to call somebody, and or hooking up at the local bar, at a certain time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so kind of stumbling into that world, you knew, hey, this is where these guys hung out. If I'm going to be a part of this, I basically, I can't send an email. I can't join a Facebook group. What I got to do is I got to be where they're at, and they've got to notice me and all that good stuff, not filling out some form on the internet and, sending in some money and all of a sudden becoming a member. At this time, 1980, you're about 20 years old or so. You join the club. And then fast forward about 8 or so years later, you go from being in the club, brand new to the club world, to the national president in 8 years.
No.
Okay.
You missed an important part.
Oh, I'm sure I did.
So when I first got in the club, we had some serious issues with the Hells Angels. So when I got in, we were outnumbered. I mean, just the whole picture, whole thing, we were probably outnumbered 10-1. And then we were just recovering from, two of our brothers got assassinated in '77. So we were still recovering as a club from the hit of two brothers getting killed. I mean, we were more of a party club at the beginning. We were 1%ers, but were we like the Hells Angels? No. Once the started going down in '77, our club got pushed into a corner, and we had to be like them. So when I got in 1980, I went from a nice guy to a nasty son of a bitch, and that's what I was. That's why they took me, and I did a lot of damage.
Well, I'm guessing they probably looked at you as somebody that was going to be an asset to the club. Like you said, you big guy, like to fight, all that type of stuff, and the need arose for somebody like that. So it was inviting for them to bring you along, just at the same time it was inviting for you to go along with it as well.
Well, yeah, I was the youngest member of the chapter at the time, probably the best fighter in the whole chapter. So I was like a torpedo. I was like a torp, something happened, I put my head down, they went fire one, and I went shot right in the middle of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I did. That's what they brought me in for, and I did the best I could at causing damage.
Did you do any fighting in your younger years, like any kind of boxing, anything
I did.
like that, or was this just like a street fight kind of deal?
No, I started out bare knuckle fighting when I was in high school. We had bare knuckle tournaments in the yard, bare knuckle boxing, and then I went into high school. Our high school had a boxing team, and I went to high school in Hawaii for 2 years, and our Hawaiian high school had a boxing team with the high school. So I boxed amateur Golden Gloves.
And what was your record? Do you remember what your record was?
Yeah, I was 3-0.
3-0.
Yes, sir.
No big surprise there, right?
I was 3-0, but you got to remember, I was like 17 at the time, and we were fighting. We were going on base and fighting soldiers. We were fighting 21, 22, 23-year-old soldiers is who we were fighting from the high school. Whoever the weight match. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So looking back on those boxing days, do you ever kind of think, man, could I have taken that next step and, tried to make a career out of boxing, or was that just not something you wanted to do?
No, I like to fight. I didn't mind getting hit. I like to punch people, but the problem was I didn't like the training. I didn't like the running. I didn't like the workout. I just wanted to go to the gym and beat people up. I didn't want to run, and I didn't want to run 6 miles a day. You know what I'm saying?
Scott, do you watch MMA at all?
I do, sir.
Yeah, because I did like full contact mixed martial arts from when I was about 16 through about 20, and it always amazed me because we were sanctioned by bodies in the UK, but they wouldn't sanction any official fights with any money behind it. So when MMA came along, and it's like, yeah, all right, this was the stuff we were doing like 25 years ago, just punching the crap out of each other, kicking with no pads and all this stuff. I was surprised it took that long to actually get a hold and be sanctioned as a body, because a real fight, you can go back to, all the boxing classics and all that, but a real fight with no gloves and almost anything goes, that's what a fight is. And, I think that's been the attraction of the MMA, because that's the fighting I did for 5 years. If I got a broken nose and I was bleeding, unless I was kind of giving up, that fight went on until, they decided I was going to be brain dead, And so that, it always amazed me why it took so long for it to get a sanctioned body, so you could actually have people who knew and wanted to fight to have this avenue to be able to go out and do it, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, nowadays, geez, you don't want to break off a fight with nobody nowadays. You know, spin around and kick you in the head. You don't even see it coming. You know, you pick a fight with a skinny dude and he throws a set on you. You know, back in the day when I was fighting, the guy that got off first won.
Oh yeah, and you knew on sight pretty much if you could win a fight.
Well, you know, if I was going in the bar to fight, I already knew who I was going after.
Right.
And,
yeah.
Most of the time, they didn't know who I was going. They didn't know I was coming after them, so that gave me the advantage. Made my record pretty good.
Oh, that's great. So, so you're doing a lot of fighting. Obviously, you're enjoying it. It's not like, oh, hey, you know, I got to get in this fight or whatever. I got to beat my way out of this bar. You know, secretly, kind of in the back of your mind.
So, let me reiterate something about that. Is now you got to remember, in 1980, you could go to a bar and kick some ass and nothing happened. I mean, if you didn't get caught on the spot, right? It was just a good time.
Yeah.
You know, you go to. I mean, you can read one of my books and you can see what happened to me in the later years. You can't go to a bar and fight no more, or they're going to come knocking at your door 3 months later. You know what I'm saying? For an assault charge.
Right. Well, yeah. And everybody, of course, quick to call the cops and everything. Back then it was, hey, we settled this ourselves. We settled it outside.
You know, there was no phones, no cell phones, no cameras. So, you know, you beat somebody up. You know, you tear the phone cord out the wall. They couldn't call the cops. You leave, and everybody forgets about it. But nowadays, it ain't like that.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget about the part about everybody having that cell phone on them with the camera, that they're filming it, and now that's automatically evident saying, look.
Well, yeah, you're going to be on World Star Hip Hop within like about 10 minutes if you start a fight anywhere right now. You know, I mean, it's, but it's the thing, like, even if, you know, even outside of fights, I mean, you start getting this kind of Karen patrol where even if you tell somebody to go away or they perceive you're rude to a clerk in a convenience store, you're on the internet. I mean, it's almost impossible now to kind of, I won't say get away with anything, but, you know, I mean, life's changed to the point where it's not sporadic anymore. You almost have to organize something and you all sign consent forms to actually be able to do anything.
You're right. You know, the minute you organize something, if something happens, that puts you in a whole other category of crime.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
you don't even want to mention the word organize anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. They found ways to make things a little more difficult.
Yeah, thank God. When I was first coming in, yeah, it wasn't that bad. You know, we were still in 1980. We were still cowboys, and it was still the Wild West. It's not like that no more.
Right. Yeah, and of course you're still in it in the 80s. You know, it wasn't until I would say like the early 90s before cell phones were a thing. You know, of course in the 80s they had the cell phone. They had the huge bricks, and it was only the stock traders and the ultra rich that had them, but there was no flip phone or anything like that. Not everybody was carrying those around, so you still had that old school, hey, we're going to meet up here. This is our Friday night hangout. This is where we're going to be. You know, hey, where do I find Junior? Oh, he's going to be at such and such a place. He's there every Friday night. And if you're not there, they're like, well, I wonder where he's at. I wonder if he's okay. And there's no way to find out, you know, where you're at or whatever. Nowadays.
Well, there was, because as a chapter, we had a thing we called a check-in. So what we would do on a weekend is one guy would stay home with a list. And then every time we went somewhere, we would call and he would write it down so he knew where everybody was. If there was an issue, everybody would get called where they were at and sent to the place. But, you know, you got to remember when I got in the club, at first, you know, I caught a case in January of 82, and I went to prison. So I was only an active member for 2 years by the time I was in prison. The funny thing was, I remember when I prospected, these guys brought me into a room, and I was surrounded by my chapter at the time. And it was when I finally decided to pull the trigger on prospecting. And I remember one of the brothers, he says, you know what the hell you're doing? I said, yeah, I do. He says, you sure this is what you want to do? I said, yep, this is what I want to do. And he told me, he says, you know, if you get in this club, he says, the chances of you dying or going to prison are pretty likely. One of those are going to happen to you. As you can see, I'm not dead, but the other one did happen to me more than once. So anyway.
So 1982 was your first trip to prison.
Yes, sir.
Walk us through that. What sent you to prison, first of all, and walk us through what that was like, prison in, you know, the 80s.
I had the first gang-related murder, and I went on the run, and I was on the run for about 6 months, I think, when that happened. And one of our people, a real piece of shit, turned state's evidence and gave me up on that case. I think if he would have kept his mouth shut, I could have walked on that case. So I took a plea bargain for that, for a voluntary manslaughter, and I did 50 months in state prison on that one. You know, and I'm not. I gotta reiterate. You know, we were at war. I mean, we were at war. This was a war. I don't hold any hard feelings towards anybody. You know, I don't got no problem with the Hells Angels. I don't have no problem with anybody. But we were at war. They started it. We were at war, and you know, I did what I had to do. And when I went to prison, now let's go back to the beginning again. Here I was, a Mongol. There was tons of Hells Angels in prison. There wasn't no Mongols in the prison. So when we got in there, there was 4 of us that went, 4 counting me that went on this case. We were the underdogs. And I remember sleeping in the cell on the main line. And we were locked down because we had just got there. We were fish. And I remember there were Hells Angels coming up to our cell. There was one guy coming up to my cell. I'm not sure if he was a Hells Angel or a hang around. Kept coming to my cell and kept taunting me, telling me, asking me if I knew what was going to happen to me when I came to the main line, if I was okay, if I knew I was going to get killed, because I was going to get killed is what he was telling me. And the funny thing is I remember I walked up to that cell and looked him right in the face, and I said, let me tell you something, dude. I said, I am a killer. I said, are you? And he looked me in the eyes, and I saw fear. And I said, and when this gate opens, I said, you're the first one I'm coming after. You're the first one I'm going to get. And you know what? That guy never came back to my cell.
Oh, imagine that.
He never. Yeah, more other ones came, but he never came back.
It's weird. There's like in England, like most of the tribalism in terms of segregation, you know, is related to football or soccer over here. And, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, you know, hooliganism, you know, in England was pretty rife. Like, if you went to a game, you could expect to get in a fight on the way back to the train station or the parking, you know, lot, whatever. And I mean, you were always like, I'm going to go to a game and there's a good chance I'm going to get in a fight on the way back. And that's how it always used to be. You'd go week to week. Yeah, there's probably a chance I'm going to get in a punch up. And, you know, I might go get a beer before the game and be in a place where I'm outnumbered 30-2 or whatever. And it just became, it was part of the culture at the time. But I think the difference was, you know, I know a lot of people who were involved in like firms, which is the like, you know, soccer kind of gangs and stuff. But the thing is, when they went to prison and stuff, it all kind of softened out a little bit. There wasn't still that antagonism, you know, once they got behind bars. It was all almost like organized, as in like, you know, when we get out, yeah, we're arch enemies. But when they were in prison, it kind of softened out a little bit. But it seems like, you know, your experience, it doesn't matter whether you're in prison or out of prison, that kind of antagonism just carries in, and it makes kind of like, you carry it for life almost. I don't know.
Well, you know, it's funny because, you know, when I got out of prison, there were some of the people in the club that argued and said, well, you know, while you're in prison, that shouldn't act as active time in the club. And my argument to that was, what do you mean it's not active time? My argument was, hey, dude, I couldn't hide. I faced some guys every day in there. I represented who I was on the yard, at the chow hall, everywhere I went, in the visiting room. Everybody knew who I was. I represented. And you know what? They came at me. They tried. I'm still here. I never PC'd up off any yard. I never locked it up off any yard. and I walked every yard I've been on with my chest out, and everybody knew who I was. And if they had a problem, they could bring it. They can bring it to me now. I don't care. If anybody's got a problem with this interview, I'm an easy guy to find. Come see me. And I'm sure we can work it out one way or the other.
So you do, of that 50-month sentence, do you do all 50 months?
Yes, sir. 50 months.
So you're 50 months in, now you get out, and now where are we at?
Okay, so I got out, I went back to San Diego. And at the time, I went back to my parents' house. You know, it was funny because I didn't know anybody else. Here I was, you know, I got in the club when I was 19. I cut loose all my childhood friends. You know, I live in Hawaii, so and came back when I was 18. So all my childhood friends, pretty much, wasn't in contact with anymore. So, you know, pretty much the Mongols and the brothers were the only friends I had. So when I got out, I had a non-association, of course. So I got a little job. I learned how to weld in the pen, so I got a little job in the shipyards welding, and had a non-association for about a year. And then as soon as my non-association, my parole, I discharged after a year, I became San Diego chapter vice president.
All right, and so we're somewhere around 86, 87.
I would have been 80. I probably would have been early 87, late 86, early 87. I became San Diego vice president.
All right, so now you're VP. You're back on a bike, back with your club brothers and everything. You've got this prison sentence behind you. Bad bump in my life, but now, you know, I'm just looking forward. I'm moving forward, and take us, you know, up to where you became, you know, president and all that very shortly thereafter.
After I was the vice president, something happened, and a crew of them came down from our mother chapter, which was based out of LA, and they came to me, and the guy who was national president at the time, me and him were friends, not just brothers, but we were friends. I mean, we'd known each other for a long time. We spent some time with each other in Oklahoma, and he was national president. So they came down on a crew, and it was actually, I think it was my birthday. We were having a birthday party in San Diego, and he came down with a bunch of guys from Mother Chapter, the big boss did, and we partied for a couple hours, had a good time, and they brought me in a room. He brought me in a room with a couple of guys and says, "Hey," he says, "I brought a special Christmas or a birthday present for you." I said, "Okay," and he says, "I've got some personal issues going on right now, and I need a little break that I have to deal with my family and stuff, and I want you to take the national presidency." And I went, "What?" You know, so you got to figure, I'm 28 years old. They want me to be the national president, but I don't want to move to LA. I'm living in San Diego. And I go, "You got to be kidding me." I said, "Me?" And the guy says, "Under one condition." He says, "When I want it back," he goes, "you got to give it back." He goes, "No elections," because, you know, it's a Democratic, at the time, the Mongols was a Democratic club. You elected your president, everybody voted, and that was the way it was. So this got given to me. And the deal was, when he was ready to take it back, I would give it back. And so it was a temporary status on my first term as national president at 28 years old.
So the weight of that, though, in being in your late 20s, I mean, we're all obviously well past 20, and you think when you're in your 20s, you know what you're doing until you get to your 30s, then you realize you don't, and you think you know in your 30s until you get to your 40s, and so on and so forth. But huge weight on your shoulders as a, you know, late 20s individual. Spend a couple of years in the national presidency, and I'm guessing the dude came back and said, "All right, I want it back."
Yep, that's what happened.
Yeah. Were you disappointed that he wanted it back? Did you think maybe he was just going to permanently retire, or you?
No, I was disappointed. I said, "Go ahead, take this shit." It was like a freaking hot plate, you know. Here, have it back. Yeah, no, that's a heavy weight, you know. And you know, I always said when I was national president, and I was president 4 different terms, but my goal as a national president was if I could keep all my guys out of jail and keep all my guys alive for my term, I did my job. And I kept to that. Nobody died. Nobody went to prison. But you got to remember, when I was national president, our club wasn't the size that it is now. We were a smaller group of guys, so I didn't really have that much volume to have to deal with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. You know, back then, a little easier to manage and all that good stuff, but still a tremendous responsibility. Absolutely.
Well, I used to take pride in saying, when I was national president, I used to take pride in saying I could stand up every member in our club against the wall and call them all off by name. Whoever's national president now, I don't know if they could do that. I mean, you know, they've got people overseas. They're huge overseas now. They're everywhere. I lost track of what's going on. But I don't think he has that type of a deal like I had personally with my members.
Well, and as anything grows, it's obviously a lot harder to keep track of all those names and remember everybody and know, okay, now where are you from again? Or are you from Arkansas? Or are you from, you know, Ireland? We're spread all over the place. But back in those days, like you say, a little more tight-knit, which, to be honest with you, and one thing I wanted to ask you, I mean, that's one of the most inviting things of getting into the motorcycle club world. You share the love for a motorcycle. Obviously, you got to have a bike to be in the club. But what most of those guys are seeking out is that brotherhood. Would you say that's correct? I mean, a lot of those guys.
Are you talking about now or back then?
Back then. Back then,
yeah. Back then, it was a whole different thing. I mean, we didn't have no money. I was national president of the Mongols. I didn't have a salary. I got a couple of breaks here and there from them guys when I was a boss. You know, I think they paid for my phone bill and a couple things like that, but I never got any money from being in that club. I'm not so sure that's what's going on now, but in retrospect, I look back and, you know, I didn't make money. I wasn't a wealthy president. You know, I lived in a moderate house. I drove a moderate vehicle, had a moderate motorcycle, and just lived moderately. You know, I was just that's all I did. I was one of the guys. I was a president, but I was one of them, which actually probably caused my demise in some issues.
Why do you think the West Coast was more prolific in terms of birth of some of the more notorious kind of groups? Because, you know, even since the 50s, you know, the West Coast, California has been a case of, you know, like polar opposites in terms of, you know, politically and economically. Why do you think it kind of gave rise on that West Coast? I mean, you know, almost anywhere in the entire United States. I mean, in Texas, I mean, yeah, we can fit 6 times the United Kingdom in Texas. So if you were in a biker gang in England, you know, you could go see somebody in half a day. If you set off at 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, you could go anywhere in the country by noon, like, whereas in the United States, it's like, yeah, I'll come see you. It's going to take me 8 days to get there. But do you think that, you know, some of the more leisurely type bike clubs, when they started appearing like in the 40s and 50s, gave way to these kind of clubs, which had, I don't know, eventually turned into gangs because they actually had places where bikers actually wanted to drive? And so, you know, that attracted that type of lifestyle. But, you know, there's no big, as far as I know, you know, big biker gangs out of Rhode Island. I mean, it's just, but
so your question is why is the West Coast, say California, why did it kind of originate there? In my opinion, is that your question?
Yeah. Where it came out of there, because I mean,
okay,
you know, it's got such a diverse populace, and it has been for like 70 years. You know.
Yeah, you know, actually, I think if you look back in the 60s, you know, you had the free spirit type of thing. You know, you had the Manson free spirit. Everybody's doing everything. I'm not, you know, Manson was a piece of junk. I'm not saying that, but the whole hippie, I think, and another thing about the West Coast is the weather's good. I mean, you can ride a motorcycle all year round. So when you're riding a motorcycle all year round, you got your hands in the pudding all year round versus New York when you got snow half the year. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking maybe it was the weather. It was the free spirit in the 60s where everybody felt free. They just wanted to express themselves, you know. And then, you know, you had Sonny Barger and, you know, in the 60s and that kind of stuff. And the concert, the Rolling Stones concert, and I think it was 68 or 69. You know, it's just, I think it's just California had the free spirit. And I think the free spirit just kind of erupted the free spirit in motorcycle. Right.
So
that's just my opinion. If I try to analyze it,
I think you're onto something there. I mean, Texas has a lot of good riding weather. I mean, we can almost ride year round if you're willing to, you know, throw a coat on in the wintertime, and we get maybe one snow every 3 years here in North Texas. You know, we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So at least there's some good riding weather, but it's nothing like California, like you say.
You know, and the better the weather, the more they're out in the bars, the more they're on the streets, and the more drama. So that's my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, you know, 6 months out of the year of snow, them dudes ain't coming out the house. You can't ride a bike on black ice, and they're staying out of the bars, and you're not going to get the drama or the amount of stuff going on, I don't think, in a place like California or the West Coast.
So moving on, kind of getting into the early 2000s now, you're kind of at the end of another term of being national president and everything. And now the rise of popularity of the MC motorcycle world starts to hit. You've got shows, and I know you were on a couple of those shows, Outlaw Bikers and all that stuff, and people are really getting interested in it. It goes from something of, you know, you being a 6-year-old kid looking out the window at the Hell's Angel on the motorcycle, and we all knew they were there, we just didn't really know much about them, to now it's just in mainstream media, it's being forced down your throat. You've got American Chopper, they're building motorcycles. You've got Sons of Anarchy, they're making a TV show about the world. And as somebody from that world, you're sitting there, you got to be scratching your head saying, wait a second, what's going on? I wanted to be in a biker club and have fun. And now, you know, it's all over the TV. I'm on National Geographic, and old Kurt Sutter out there is writing a program and putting this together and kind of, I'm not going to say exposing our world, but throwing it in everybody's faces of, hey, this thing's been out there. What were your thoughts about kind of that portion of the history there?
Yeah, well, in 2000, I was scratching my head, but I was scratching my head in a prison cell. So I went back to the pen in 98 for another case, but we'll skip that for now. And if you want to get back, if you want to start on the Sons of Anarchy thing, you know, I watched the show a little bit, a few episodes here and there, and that some of it was a little accurate, but most of it wasn't.
Like anything with Hollywood, right? They got to Hollywood it up, make it seem more interesting, glorify some stuff in there, you know, for TV, basically. I guess I jumped around on the timeline in the wrong way. So 98-ish is when you went in for the second time. And yeah, of course, that's the infamous, I'll call it, Billy Queen case.
Well, yeah, Billy Queen had just basically come into the scene in our club. I never met him. I never met him when I was a president, and I never saw him, and he was never around. He didn't come into the club till after I was gone, back in the pen. So the only time I ever saw Billy Queen was when he came into court at my bail hearing. I came back to court on a writ of habeas corpus from the state pen, and he came into my bail hearing in a 3-piece suit, all shaved up, to testify that I was national president and that I was a flight risk because I was trying to get bail on a writ of habeas to get out. So that's the only time I really laid eyes on Billy Queen.
And so you're going back in now. This is going to be your second stretch, right? I mean, is your mind going back to that first stretch, like, oh man, here we go again, I got to go through all this again? Or did you have,
maybe it was like that, but you know what, when you're going back and you're in that position, you put your mind in that position of the situation you're going to be in. I mean, I'm going into this thing, I'm not looking the past, I'm looking everything straight in the eye, and I got to go into Mongol mode, and I got to go into I don't give a shit mode, and that's what I do when I go to the pen. I mean, I turn into what I need to be.
Now, how old were you that second time, Scott?
The second time, I would have been 96. I would have been 36.
All right.
Because I was born in 60.
Your second sentence then was for how long?
That was 14 years. So what they did to me on that one was we were in a bar, and we had an issue with the guy in there, and I was with the brother, and the guy had some kind of an eye problem. I don't know if he had something in his eye, or if it was hot, or had a teardrop in his eye or something, but whatever it was, he kept staring in our direction. It didn't really bother me, but it bothered the brother I was with. So the brother I was with went to confront him about his eye issue, and the guy pulled the knife and started stabbing at the bro. I was right there, and I busted a glass on the guy's face and dropped him, and that was it. That was that story.
And so that's what you got you sent up for the 14 years. Now, did you do all of the 14 years?
No, what happened was, now on that case, because I was national president at the time, somehow the guy's knife disappeared. So we said there was a knife. Everybody at the bar said there wasn't. The cops said there wasn't. So later on, what we did is I took a plea bargain on that. Or I didn't, pardon me, I didn't take a plea. I took it to the box and got the 14 years. So later, after I did about, let's see, I did about 3 years in state prison, and then I got an attorney, an appellate attorney. We got a detective, an investigator, and they came up with witnesses that saw the knife, did a motion for a new trial because the knife, we had witnesses that saw the knife and saw the incident. Judge gave me a motion for a new trial. I came back from prison for a new trial, got granted a writ of habeas, and got out after 3 years, and waited for new trial.
While you're waiting for the new trial, you're treated as basically kind of like being on bail, so to speak, or whatever you're.
Yes, I got non-association, no third-party contact with the brothers. I can't call nobody, and if I do, automatically violated.
Gotcha.
Back to the pen, no questions asked.
Okay, so you go for your new trial. What happens on the new trial?
Well, I never made it to the new trial. So during this time I was out was actually the time that the incident in Laughlin happened with the Mongols and Hells Angels. My wife at the time wanted to go to that thing, and I didn't want to go. I said, it's not a good idea. Like I said, I had an NA, and we thought about going, but we stayed home and missed that Laughlin thing, and thank God I missed that one, or I probably would have been caught up in that, right in the middle of that too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how that went.
So you served the 3 years of that sentence, and then never had to go back.
No. Then what happened was I went to me and my wife at the time went to a bar in Long Beach, and there were some brothers at the bar. And like I said, I had non-association. I told my wife, I said, well, let's just go. I see it. They're over there. They didn't see me. I wasn't wearing a patch at the time. And I had pulled in the parking lot, and I'd seen them over there. I said, let's just go. I don't want an issue. She goes, well, let's just go to the opposite end of this place and have a drink. So I said, all right. So we parked the bike, and I kind of went around the outside, hoping nobody saw me. And we ordered up a drink, and I had my back to the brothers. And all of a sudden, the brother comes up and says, hey, Junior, remember me? And I turn around, and now I got one at the table, and he asked me if I come over for a drink, and I said, one drink, and I got to go. I went over to the table and had a drink, and we left. That was on a Sunday. And then on Monday, my attorney called me into court saying they were ready to make a deal before the new trial. I was hoping to get a deal and get time served, just get discharged of the stupid thing, and but when I got there, they had a little surprise for me. They had a photo of me at the bar with these guys. They revoked everything, put me back in the pen. I pled for another deal. I took 6 years on the deal. I had to go back for another 3.
So now you get out after those 6 years, and obviously not 6 years together. You had the 3, then another 3, and you get out. And what's going through your mind now?
you know, I'm on parole. I had a couple of issues with the guy that was now in charge at the time. I had a couple of issues. That was Doc Cavazos. When I got out, he was the national president at the time, and I had some issues with the guy. I didn't think the guy was straight up. I thought the guy was full of crap, and I didn't have a problem letting him know about it. So me and him had some issues, and at the time I was on parole, so I stayed away from the club, and I just worked, and I did a 3-year parole on that, and then after I got off parole, me and my wife went ahead and moved to Salt Lake City. My new wife at the time moved to Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Now, Scott, when you went back in prison each time, was it easier in terms of, you know, having maybe a little bit of a reputation? Because, you know, I've got 5 brothers, right? And 2 of them have spent probably more time in prison than they have out of prison. But when you went back in, was it easier when you went back in terms of people knowing, all right, just leave them alone?
No, my reputation had preceded me. I mean, I was okay. I had some issues when I hit the yard when I first got back, but when I had to go back for the second 3 to finish it, I had some issues when I went back. But I confronted them. You know, the thing is you got to confront them. I felt like this, you know, if you got an issue with me, I'm just going to confront the problem before they had enough time to get a crew where they could catch me slipping. If it was one guy, Hell's Angel in the yard, the day I got there, I confronted him within 10 minutes when I hit the yard. I was on him. Yeah. What's going on? Let's do it. Let's do it. Or if we can't get along, let's get it on. That was my attitude.
Right.
Yeah. Literally just face that problem head on, get it over with so we can move on down the road. And
that's right. I mean, let's do it right now. I mean, if one of us is going to the hole, we're both going to the hole, let's do it. I'm not going to wait and worry about it. I didn't worry about nothing anyway. I still don't. But you know what? Face it head on. Let's get it on. Let's get it over with, or let's shake hands and do our own thing.
Now you're out, and where does your life go from there? Do you feel like you want to go back to the club? Do you think, you know, I've got to put all this stuff behind me?
No, like I said, I was having some issues with Doc Cavazos. I wasn't really digging what was going on. You got to remember now, I was a president that I was one of the guys. I mean, when we went to a bar, I was the first one in, I was the last one out. If there was a fist fight, I was right in the freaking middle of it, and I was the president. You know, now you got into a world later on of national presidents that never came out of the house, that were armchair quarterbacks. You know what I'm saying? I never did that. I had to play in the game. I had to throw the football when I was out there, and I think that's why when our club was only 250 members and I was the president, I think we were more respected and more feared than we are now, because everybody knew what I'd do. I'd lead into whatever, you know, in the day. Like I said, I was the first one in, last one out. It ain't like that no more.
Right. So you go through all this in your life and something comes along in your mind and says, I'm going to write a book. So what was that thing that triggered in your mind saying, man, you know what? I'm going to write a book.
Okay. So on the end of my second term, on the 3 years before I got out, on the end of it, it was my parole day. And I don't want to get too much into this because this is in my second book, but it was my parole day, and I went to discharge, and I had my dress outs on, got to the gate, and at the last minute, they told me I owed them 4 more months. So I literally was dressed out at the gate with my bag when they turned me around, sent me back in for 4 months in the state pen. As you can probably figure, the day you're getting out and they tell you got 4 more months, it's pretty devastating. You don't know if you're angry. You don't know what kind of feelings you're feeling. You know, you don't know if you want to rip someone's face off or you just want to sleep, or you don't know what you want to do. It's just, you know, it's the biggest fear of, I think, of any inmate or convict. They're going to do that to you, and it happened to me. So here I am the day I get out. I got 4 more months left. They slapped that on me, so I'm walking the yard, and I'm telling these guys can't believe it. I'm walking with some friends, and they're going, they can't believe what happened to me. They're going, man, they go, this is crazy. One guy says, "You ever think about writing a book?" And I said, "Yeah, what?" He goes, "You got to write a book about all the shit that happened to you, about your life, and this 4 months you got to do again." So I started writing a book. I sat in the day room that extra 4 months I had to do, and I used a golf pencil on a freaking legal pad, a yellow legal pad, and I wrote with that golf pencil every day on that 4 months. And when I got out for that 4 months, I had about 3/4 of a book done.
Now, did you find that therapeutic, or was it more of a, oh, I just want to say what I've been through? Because you get a lot of writers, and some of it is like exorcising their demons. I mean, you know, the Shepherd Max, you know, he had a trilogy of books, and that's just because he can write and he's inventive. You know, I had books which were children's stories, and it wasn't till about 30 years later I kind of saw the pattern in some of the stuff I was writing, and I was actually trying to get some of the things I couldn't express out off my chest. Now, were you doing it as like a therapy, or you just thought kind of, you know, I just want to tell my story?
No, so this is kind of interesting. I'm glad you asked me this. Actually, it was therapeutic. I was looking for something to pass time. You know, I was always good. I could write poems. I was always good at telling a story. I could always paint a picture with words where people saw. Always, I could do that. And I actually had a hustle when I was in the pen. I would write poetry for guys to send to their wives.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I would make money doing that. So it was pretty much therapeutic. So it was more like memoirs. I was just writing, and I started at far as I can remember, started stair-stepping, trying to do whatever. And then, so I got about a chapter written of this thing, and I was living in a dorm. I was a level 2 at the time. I was dorm living in the pen, and everybody reads. I mean, if you can get a book in the pen, a good book, I mean, you got Stephen King, James Patterson books, Dean Koontz. If you can get your hands on one of those, it's a score. It's hard to get good books. The good books are hard to find. There's a waiting list to get them in the pen. So I wrote this. So what happened was, some of these reading guys, I would throw a chapter of my book at these guys, say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" So one guy read the book, read the chapter. And then he gave it to another guy, read the chapter. Then they brought me back the chapter. Then by next Friday, those 2 guys were at the end of my bunk, and they said, "Hey, dude, you got another chapter done yet?" And I said, "I do." So those guys read the second chapter. They passed it on. By the end of the 3rd week, there were 4 guys at the end of my bunk going, "Hey, dude, you done with another chapter yet?" And these guys were avid readers, and I was drawing their attention. They're going, "Dude, you got something here." I said, "You think so?" They said, "You got something."
Now, did that surprise you in terms of, because, you know, a lot of writers, actually famous writers, they don't start until a later age. There's very few, you know, either prolific or famous writers who start when they're like 15 or 18. A lot of it comes in the later age. Did it kind of surprise you that, oh my goodness, this is an outlet for me to, you know, just express myself, and you know what, there's other people who relate to this, and I've got an audience?
It didn't really surprise me, because I'm the type of guy that can accomplish anything I set my mind to. You know, everybody says, you know, there's an old saying, "Hey, if you want to make money, go to prison and write a book." You know what I'm saying? That wasn't my intent. It just ended up that way. It ended up that way, and I made some money off of it, a little bit here and there, you know? So you know, I got out the pen, and I had this book about 3/4 of the way done. The first edition, the very first book. And Cavazos somehow got word that I had written a book. So he published one and put it on the market before I did. And it got picked up by, I'm not sure it was Simon & Schuster or Random House picked it up. And it flopped. The book flopped. They didn't get sales on it. So when mine got done, I tried to get someone to publish it, and they wouldn't touch it. They said, "Well, you know, somebody contacted me. I think it was Simon & Schuster contacted me and said, you know, we just did a book, a Mongol book. It didn't do well. We don't think there's a lot of market right now for that. So we're going to pass on it." So I kind of sat on that thing for a couple of years. And then one year for Christmas, behind my back, without me knowing, my wife had took my memoirs to a publisher and got one single hard copy published of my book and gave it to me for Christmas.
Oh.
And then once I saw the one book, when I actually saw it in my hand, you know, when I actually saw the book in my hand, I realized this is real. So we've decided to publish ourselves, and it took off, and it's doing really well. You know, I found that when I write a book, my books are true. I think people like the story. They like to hear what I went through and what it's like to be who I was.
You finish up the first book, the wife puts it in it, and trust me, Junior, I know that feeling, you know, when you actually are holding that in your hand and you look at it like, man,
it's freaking real. It's real.
It's different than the legal pad and the golf pencil and all that stuff, but holding that book in your hand, yeah, it's a good feeling. So you're looking at that book, and obviously, you know, you've written 2. So what brought you to say, you know what, I got to go ahead and do this again? You know, because I know back from my days when I wrote the books and everything, you write a book and you're like, man, I'm happy that I have this book. I'm holding it in my hand, but I'm kind of glad this is over, because it's not the easiest thing in the world, as you well know.
I mean, you can validate. I'm sure you can validate. Your partner can validate. Writing a book ain't easy. It's hard. It's hard shit, man. I mean, you got to sit down every day. You got to set some time aside every day, and you got to remember, and you got to follow your lines, your outlines of the book. Then that's just part of it. You got to get it edited. You got to get it, you know, in Kindle. You got to. It takes about a year to get this thing from beginning to end, and it's not an easy thing to do, to write a book. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, Max.
So you finish up book 2, you got it out. So now you got 2 books under your belt. Other than that, what's been going on with you recently? I mean, tell us about Junior in the present day. Okay, well, let me go back a little bit. So I went to after I discharged my parole in 2007, and the problem I had with Cavazos, I pretty much decided, hey, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with the club. I need to just move somewhere and start fresh. You know, I had a friend in Salt Lake City that I'd grown up with. His name's Curtis, and in my first book, at the beginning, you might remember that me and Kurt were at the lake fishing, but when this whole thing started. So Kurt was out there in Salt Lake and had become a project manager of a big company, and I went out there to weld. So I moved out there in 2007 in Salt Lake, and then by 2008, the club, they had arrested, the club had got a RICO. Cavazos was gone. It was under new leadership. So I still really wasn't interested in really going back active. You know, I just discharged my parole, and then, you know, one day I just got a little fire in my belt and put on my patch, went down to a local bar down there in Salt Lake City, and in a little town called Magna. And one thing led to another. Next thing you know, we had 5 freaking chapters. I think it was 7 chapters in Salt Lake City within 2 years. Wow.
So I kicked that off, and then as of today, some of the chapters has filtered into Idaho. So I started Salt Lake City, and then I was back up in the club again. Now I was in Mother Chapter, but I was a nomad out of Mother Chapter in Salt Lake.
Gotcha.
And then as of today, I'm retired. I got a little job. I'm a manager of shipping and receiving at a casino, and my office overlooks the river, and things are good.
That's good. When you got your job that you're doing now, did people kind of come up to you and say, hey man, tell me some stories, all that? Do you get any of that?
Well, I don't, they didn't know. Nobody really was putting 2 to 2 together, I don't think, when I took the job. It was funny because just about a month ago, there were a couple painters that work for the facilities were looking through my office window, looking at me, and I know who they are. We talk all the time. They're looking at me, and the guy opens the door and puts a camera in the door, and the picture on the camera was from Nat Geo. And they had saw the show, and they go, hey, is this you? And I said, I guess you guys found me. I've been at the company for 8 years, and no one had ever said nothing. So now they're just starting to click on this TV show that was filmed in 2007 on Nat Geo. They came up to you and go, dude, what are you doing here? I said, I'm just a normal guy, you know. You know, with my job at the casino and the money, the little bit of money I get from the books, we do okay. You know, my wife, we do okay.
Now, Scott, why do you think there's not been a great translation from, I guess, books to movies in the same way as like maybe cars? Because I mean, you take, you know, successful franchises like the Fast and the Furious, and there's always been like years and years of like these great car movies, but you know, there's not really been that many great biking movies. I mean, it's the same thing with sports. I mean, you take something like soccer, right? It's the most played sport in the world. Every country plays it, but the movies are always crap, right? You take football, you know, there's some good movies, there's some good basketball movies, there's almost no good ice hockey movies. But, you know, with biking, I mean, there hasn't really been that many good movies out there across decades compared to, like I said, with the whole kind of car thing. What do you think that is? That
I just don't think there's a calling. There's that many people interested in the bike world. I think it's kind of a fading thing. I think bikes have gone to more of a wealthy group of people.
right?
Maybe when Sons of Anarchy was out, would have been a good time to come out with a movie. I think when everything was up, everybody was following Sons of Anarchy, but the whole vibe of motorcycles have changed from when I got in. You know, when I got in the 1980s, it was dirty Levi's. Nobody had new bikes. I mean, the only bikes we had, we put together. You know, I borrowed a motor from my bike. My first bike was new, but after that, I had used bikes. We built them. We traded parts. And I just don't know if there's a market now for the outlaw. I don't know. I classify it maybe like a Western. You don't see Westerns on the big screen much anymore.
Yeah, I think it's more about, I think about being uncomfortable. I mean, a lot of people, you know, think, all right, yeah, I could get behind the wheel of a sports car and drive it fast and stuff, put themselves in those positions. But I think people realize very early on, when you were talking about when you were first attracted, you know, biking and stuff, I think I'd made my mind up by age 6 that, yeah, I don't want to go on a motorbike. It's not for me. And I think a lot of people come to that decision pretty early on, you know, and it kind of separates out. I don't think, you know, outside of the middle class riders who, you know, you get the whole kind of wild hogs type, you know, audience who go out there. I think most people decide at an early age it's either for them or not for them. Whereas a car, it's like, it's inevitable you're going to be driving a car at some point. Whereas with a bike, that has to be a decision.
I think I agree. I agree with you right there. You know, like when I got in the club, I wanted to be an outlaw. I wanted to be a badass dude. That's what I wanted to be. And I practiced it. I learned it, and I taught it. And I'm a badass. And I'm an old badass. My days are done. I'm an old cowboy. I'm retired, but I did it. I walked it. I talked it, and I lived it. And I'm still here to talk about it. So that's got to be worth something.
Yeah, and kind of going back to one of those things that was told to you a long time ago. Yeah, you get out by either going to prison or you die, and you did one of those two, but at least you're here to live the tale. So
well, it's kind of ironic. The guy that told me that is dead. So it happened. One happened to him, and one happened to me. So yeah.
So do you still ride today?
I do, sir.
What are you riding these days?
I got me an 05 Road King, carbureted.
Nice.
Carbureted Road King. Everything's good, man. Me and my wife are doing well.
That's great. That's great. So, Junior, as we close, can you tell everybody where they can find the books, where they can find more information about you and all that good stuff?
Okay. Volume 1, Volume 2. Read Volume 1 first. You're gonna love them. The real deal, no BS. This is how it went down. This is how I wrote it. Get them on Amazon, or you can get them on my website, scottjreckson.com. You get them off the website, I'll autograph it.
Cool.
Buy these books, they're great. Buy Max's books, they're great. Buy the Wolf's books, they're great. And you know what? Everybody have a happy new year. It's good.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure having you on, man.
Yeah, thank you very much, Junior. Certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And here we are, 2021, January 1, to take some time out of your day and spend that with us.
We're just kind of hoping that things can't get worse is not a challenge.
I don't think Wolf, I don't think they can, man. I'm looking for it to be better. When you're at the bottom, all you got to go to the top.
Right. We hope so, but you know.
There you go. There you go. Well, all your information is going to be tagged along with the show notes and everything on this. Once again, Junior, we certainly appreciate you joining us for this.
You got it. And Max, I'll see you soon, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.